can't figure out these camera settings. So while I do that, here's the intro.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check us out there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, you'll see I might look different. I think I hit the wrong button on my camera settings here. Not the camera settings, the little light here that makes the production look a little bit better, more professional. And we don't like this, right? Like the cool blue light, because then I look like a zombie. But if I go all the way in the other direction, I guess I just kind of look a little bit tan, which if you're in Buffalo like me in the last 5 months, you know that's not the case. I guess we could leave it here or here. I don't remember what I had it at. So, all right, we're going to go one away from the warmest color. I think that's good. Anyways, all that just to say, you should check out our YouTube channel if you want. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, and we've got a lot to talk about on today's show, including Kevyn Adams and Don Granato's end-of-season press conferences, some of the notes I jotted down from listening and the takeaways. We do have some intel on different players as we head into the offseason here, the way that they sounded on certain things, certain questions. There's a lot to get to, especially from what Kevyn Adams said, and we'll touch on the playoffs a little bit at the end of the show. Toronto and Jack Eichel. Good day. We'll have some fun tossing the playoffs around a little bit later on. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If you want to get involved with the show, at Locked On Sabres on Twitter, do it there, or in the comment section on our YouTube channel. Starting with Granato, because we'll spend more time with Kevyn Adams. Granato, I guess, didn't have a ton different than what he's really had to say in the past few months and weeks as the games kind of progressed here. Granato answering questions about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, still believes in him, believes the team is set up for stability that there hasn't been for years. A lot of what you've heard a lot of from Don Granato. Really high praise about Devon Levi, as you might expect, about his preparation and whatnot, way beyond his years. And Granato said the net is nobody, that the goalies will decide that in training camp. He didn't really say who the goalies would be, so I guess that's kind of up in the air, open competition. You never know how that's going to shake out. We'll go through the goalie situation in segment number 2 of today's show as well. So a lot of that going on today's show. Let's go through what Adams really had to say, though. Kevyn Adams kind of going subject by subject here, starting with some of the personnel. Kevyn Adams said that he can't imagine Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power not being a part of the team long-term, and went on to say that there will be contact or has been contact with both Dahlin's agent and Power's agent about extensions this summer. Now, Dahlin, we expect, right? He is in the second year of an RFA deal that expires after next season. So one more year, and then he's a restricted free agent, and he will need a contract. So it makes a lot of sense to sign him this offseason. They could sign him officially July 1st. Now, as to what Dahlin's extension will look like, we'll talk more about that when we do our exit interview episode of Rasmus Dahlin, which will be fairly soon. We'll do the forwards first and then get the defenseman. He'll be number 1 on that list. Could he be the highest paid defenseman in hockey? That would be over $11.5 million a year, which is what Erik Karlsson gets. I'm not ruling that out. Now, some guys have taken some hometown discounts, right? Cousins, Thompson, maybe Dahlin falls more in the $9.5 to $10 million range, but I wouldn't want to rule out that he gets the highest defensive contract in hockey. He's earned it. I mean, he's one of the best defensemen in hockey. I've made arguments that he is the best defenseman in hockey, right up there with Adam Fox and Cale Makar, even better than Erik Karlsson. So that's going to be a lengthy discussion to get to about what Dahlin's contract will look like. But you can kind of, you have an educated guess of what it'll look like, right? Somewhere between $9.5 and $12 million. I know it's a big range, but it'll definitely fall within there. But Power, man, I don't know. What does that contract look like if he signs in the first place? Now, Owen Power has more reason to not sign with the Sabres right now because what's he going to get? Whereas he could bet on himself and earn more money after one more terrific season, takes a big step forward, another terrific season takes a step forward. If I'm Owen Power's agent, I'm not thinking I'm in any rush to sign. But he could, money talks and guaranteed money talks, especially in the NHL. So if Kevyn Adams comes at Power with an extension and they want to play ball, yeah, what is that? Is that 8 years, $8 million per? Do I have to go to 9? Or can I do I even have to go to 8? 7? Like, man, I have no idea. I have to imagine it's at least 7. There's no way it's lower than 7. And I can't imagine it's more than 9.5. Right? No way. It's more than 9.5. Maybe 9, but you're doing it to get the discount. And I guess at 9, you could be thinking you're getting a discount because you could be thinking he'll be an $11 million player in a couple of years. Power's extension, that's a tough nut to crack. But I might, if you made me guess, you pinned me down right now, what would he get per year? 8. I think I'd just go with a nice clean $8 million per year. But Adams on both of those players, expressing some confidence they'll get some deals done. Adams on Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons says he wants both players back. And that it has to make sense for both sides. To me, both Adams and Granato sounded a little stronger on the idea of bringing Okposo back than Girgensons. Now, maybe Girgensons, they just want to make one spot available for a kid. And Okposo brings the leadership aspect and the captaincy, and he's so respected in the room that element will, and in fact, he'll probably be cheaper. Okposo on a 1-year deal maybe makes a little bit more sense. Because I will say, multiple times during these press conferences, especially with Adams, Lukas Rousek was brought up unprompted. Lukas Rousek, who played 2 games for the Sabres down the stretch, who has bottom 6 potential on this team, 24 years old. Like, it's time for him to make the NHL if he's ever going to. And I thought Adams bringing him up a couple of different times, might point to they think he could crack a bottom 6 spot, and there's not a lot of room. So one way to free that up for him would be let Girgensons walk. So we'll see on that front. But he did express interest in both of those guys staying. Adams said he's had conversations with Ryan Johnson. I think he's a good prospect. It says it's in Johnson's court and they are waiting. Now, that's interesting because I had talked about how I thought maybe the Sabres have decided, hey, we'll take the compensatory pick. We'll let him walk. We won't offer him contract. We'll get the 2nd-round pick for him not signing, which is what they would have gotten. But the way that it was phrased makes it sound like they have offered him a contract and they're waiting on Johnson to decide. So either way, not the end of the world if he doesn't sign because they'll get a 2nd-round pick. But that's where we're at with prospect defenseman Ryan Johnson. And of course, questions about Matthew Savoie and Jiri Kulich. I will say, in the past, Adams always with the phrase, they don't want to block the development of certain prospects. Didn't hear that about Kulich or Savoie. There was optimism that those guys could make the NHL and earn spots, but you heard a lot more of, well, we don't want to rush these guys, and we want to make sure we're doing what's right for their development. And he was sure to include, if they earn jobs, no doubt they'll be here, and we'll make sure that they're here. But you didn't hear that phrase that we've heard a lot in the past of they don't want to block development of some of their prospects. So maybe not as optimistic, in my opinion, that those two will be on this team at the beginning of next season. So it's probably the highlights, I would say, of what I picked out from what we heard from Adams and a little bit of Granato as well, except for goaltender. I want to carve out the whole second segment to talk about goaltender. What was said, especially about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who I have said multiple times now, he is the biggest decision the Sabres have to make this offseason. So we'll get to that, at least internal decision. We'll get to that when we come back. What Adams said about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, what Granato said about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook, grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up, place your first bet. Get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can bet with your heart, right? You can bet against Jack Eichel and the Golden Knights. You want to bet on the Winnipeg Jets money line or plus a goal and a half on the puck line. You could do that at FanDuel. Or hey, maybe you're an emotional hedge guy. You're rooting against Eichel, but you want to make sure, hey, if he does win, I'll get a little something on top of it. So maybe you want to bet on the Golden Knights on the money line or over-unders, all available to you at FanDuel. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us the first listen every day. And everydayers, as we progress here on the show, as we kick into full speed offseason mode, a couple of different things we're going to have for you. We're going to have a prospects report on what's going down in Rochester. They're headed to the Calder Cup playoffs. And we'll do our exit interview series that we did last offseason. I will go player by player. We'll break down the season they had, what expectations are for next season, and any contract-related types of decisions, whether or not a guy should be traded or whatnot. Exit interviews are coming starting next week, but a prospects report before that, tackling the Amherst. And we'll have coverage of the IIHF World Championships, what they get once they get going in May, since so many Sabres are going. I'm going to have to watch this thing. All these games, probably. Anyways, back to what Adams and Granato had to say on their end-of-season press conferences on Wednesday. So now we go to goaltending. And this is, to me, what I was looking out for the most, because I've said Luukkonen is their biggest decision. He can't go to Rochester. To me, does not make sense for him to be the 1B to Devon, Levi in Buffalo. So what do you do with him? To me, you trade him. It's a simple, easy decision to make. It's the only right decision. He has value. Recoup that value. Spin him into a defenseman. Spin him into a more veteran presence in goal. Spin him into a draft pick. Do whatever you got to do. Because I can't see him being the best option for the Sabres next to Devon, Levi in Buffalo. And I cannot see him clearing waivers to go down to Rochester. So a trade ends up being the best option. As I should add, I don't see them wanting to do 3 goaltenders again next season. So what was said about Luukkonen? Well, Don Granato said the team does believe in him. He got significant minutes, maybe a more significant role than even he was planning. That he does believe he has a bright future. And he did add in, he hopes that is with the Sabres. And then Kevyn Adams went on to talk about Luukkonen, saying he made good progress. Sometimes they weren't great in front of him. He did point out that he was inconsistent at times. I would say it was the minimum that you would say about a player that could still have a future with you. They did not sound to me like, oh yeah, this guy's getting traded. But they did not also go so far as for me to think, oh, he's definitely here next year. I think they kept it right down the middle, which leaves all options on the table, I guess, which is probably, honestly, what Adams and Granato want to do in that situation when they're answering these questions, is not pin themselves down on any front. And Luukkonen has, expressed his interest in coming back to the team. They did say, the question was even asked, to Adams, could you see a scenario where Levi and Luukkonen are back as your goaltenders next year? And again, Adams doesn't jump to the opportunity to say yes, but he eventually gets around to, yeah, it's something they would be open to. Granato talking about competition and training camp. So that's where we're at with Luukkonen in terms of the comments. It was notable, though, I thought they were willing to point out how inconsistent he was. They were never going to bash him. They were never going to bash him. I was a little disappointed to not hear anything about, or any questions from Granato and Adams about what their mindset would be about adding a veteran goaltender next to Devon Levi, and whether or not they want that mentor for him. They love Levi and his development and his capabilities of being a number 1. So I'd fully expect that that's going to be a thing next year, that he's one of their 2 goaltenders. But man, I was really looking for signs that they could move on from Luukkonen, upgrade from Luukkonen to be their other goaltender next year. And I would say we saw just enough signs from what they said to keep that idea open and for us to continue to talk about it, but not quite at a point where I'm betting on them to do it. Very, very up in the air. What else? Granato about the competition between Luukkonen and Levi. Luukkonen, maybe being frustrated at the end of the year because he wasn't playing. And Granato said, all I can say is that it's a great problem to have. That net is nobody's right now. It has to be earned and re-earned again. He went on to talk about how even Luukkonen can pick up some things from Levi because they're in the same peer group. You can only learn so much from advice from guys like Craig Anderson, who are just in a completely different stage of their careers. Levi might be doing some things that Luukkonen is picking up on. He talks about Power and Dahlin learning from each other all the time. Dahlin will do something on the ice, and the Power will pick up, and they're like, oh, okay, I could do that too. And then Power will do something on the ice, and Dahlin will go, oh, yeah, I could do that. And maybe that's happening a little bit with Levi and Luukkonen. But, man, I'm very entrenched in I think it would be a mistake. I think it would be a big mistake for him to be one of the Sabres' 2 goaltenders next season. So that's where we're at with the goalie situation. Comrie, what Adams put it was he had a good start to the year and then he never really got the rhythm. Excuse making, I would say, was what I heard a lot for Eric Comrie. I cannot expect him to be here next year. I think from what I heard and from how his season went, I would bet heavily he's just going to get waived. And if he clears, he goes to Rochester. He's one of your 2 goaltenders down there. If he gets picked up, then good for him. He's going to continue to be in the NHL. All right. Time out here. When we come back, Stanley Cup playoffs. Toronto losing and Jack Eichel losing. It was a good night to be a Sabre fan on Tuesday night, if those are your rooting interests. So we'll get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. And we are presented by Athletic Greens. It's a great way to start your morning, right? Every day, whether or not you're using the shakes. And it's a very quick, scoop in a cup of water, mix it up, taste delicious. You're getting all the vitamins and minerals that you need. Or another simple way to do it, they have the little eyedroppers. The bottles are this big. You take 1 drop, you put it in your water, you put it in your coffee. You have no idea it's there, while picking up, again, all those vitamins and minerals. AG1. So what is this stuff? With 1 delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. Special blend of ingredients that supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Importance of a multivitamin. Tons of people take some kind of multivitamin, and it's important to choose one with high-quality ingredients that your body will actually absorb. AG1 is a small micro habit with big benefits. It's the one thing you can do every day that's simple and easy to take great care of yourself. It costs less than $3 per day. You're investing in your health. It's less than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself. In fact, the Athletic Greens founder, the way he created it was he experienced a ton of gut health issues, and he ended up with a complicated supplement routine that cost him over $100 per day. He made it cheaper, less than $3 per day for AG1. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health. Arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, AG1 going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D. And for on-the-go, 5 free travel packs that are super easy to use. All you got to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sneaky Joe DiBiase. Let's get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tuesday night was a lot of fun. If you were rooting against the Toronto Maple Leafs, like I was, and if you're rooting against Jack Eichel, like I was, and I did bet against Jack Eichel. I was on the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I will say, starting with the Maple Leafs, this is not to me about Leafs hate. It's just funny at this point, right? It is just blatantly hilarious. This team, everything is set up for them. They've been amazing this regular season. Again, Tampa has not. They really fell apart as the season progressed. And out there, it's their time. Tampa is slowing down. They look old. This is Toronto's year. First time in 19 years. And what happened? Game 1, you lost 7-3. You're getting booed off the ice down 3-0 after 20 minutes of play. I mean, it happened quick. less than 2 minutes in, I think was the first Tampa Bay goal, and they go on to win 7-3. Man, Toronto. I mean, how can you beat it? It's again, like, I almost feel bad. I love rooting against the Leafs and crapping on them, but man, it almost makes you depressed because it's so ridiculous at this point that they just can't win in the playoffs. And maybe they will bounce back from this, but you lose game 1 at home like that, that's tough to come back from. So we'll see. Maybe Toronto's a good bet right now at whatever odds they might be at FanDuel Sportsbook. But anyways, Toronto, like, it was a lot of power plays. Michael Bunting gets ejected in the second period. They kind of were running around out there with like a chicken without its head. I will say this: one benefit that directly impacts the Sabres if the Leafs lose. Pittsburgh, according to Darren Dreger of TSN, is sniffing around Jason Karmanos, Sabres associate GM of the Rochester Americans, a key man in building both the Sabres' current scouting department and their analytics department, especially the analytics department. He comes from Pittsburgh. Sabres hired him from the Penguins a couple years ago. He has many years of experience within the Penguins front office, was their assistant GM for multiple seasons. That would be a big loss. I mean, I've even seen the idea floated that maybe you kick Kevyn Adams up to president of hockey ops, and you make Karmanos GM to keep him in the fold. That's how important he is. That's how vital he is. I think he is a very good evaluator of talent. And losing a key man like that, I mean, he was the guy with the hockey department experience, right? That wasn't Adams. Adams done a good job, but he didn't have a hockey department background. He came from the business side. I know he's a player and assistant coach before that, but he came from the business side. Whereas Karmanos, man, like, he's been working in front offices, evaluating talent for years. Losing him would be big. And my thought process is, in Toronto, Kyle Dubas, the Leafs GM, doesn't have a contract after this season. And it's very unlikely that should they lose in the first round of Tampa, that he'll be retained by the Maple Leafs. He'll become available. And when he's available, he's still very young, and he has built some great rosters in Toronto. They've gotten snake bitten once the playoffs come around. He is, I think, very highly regarded in the league. And to me, I don't know if the Penguins will agree with this sentiment. I would think this way. So I'm hoping they do as well. If Kyle Dubas becomes available, he is the number one target for any team that's looking for a GM. So if you're the Sabres and you want to hang on to Karmanos, you want Dubas on the market, because there would be some chance, at least, that the Penguins would go, yeah, we know Jason Karmanos, but Kyle Dubas is available. Let's go get him. Built some awesome teams in Toronto. Let's go get Kyle Dubas. So I might hope that the Penguins land on Dubas. But for that to happen, you probably need Toronto to lose in the first round. Otherwise, we could be looking at the Sabres losing their associate general manager. And then when it comes to Vegas and Jack Eichel, hey, it was not a great debut for Jack Eichel. A -3, really bad expected goals for and Corsi percentage. Now, everybody on Vegas had a bad Corsi percentage. I told you going in when I made my picks, I picked Winnipeg. They were a very slight favorite at a lot of these analytics sites. And that's come to fruition one game in by a lot. Holy cow, Vegas. 17 shots on goal, is it? They hardly tested Connor Hellebuyck. My theory was Winnipeg would get through because Connor Hellebuyck would just steal the series. He doesn't have to. He only had to stop 16 to 17 shots on goal. In fact, the game was 5-1. A couple of those were empty netters. But, just by looking at the scoreboard, you could say, well, if Hellebuyck only stopped 13 to 17, they would have won the game. The bar was not set high for the goaltending. I mean, Vegas, they just got completely outplayed from beginning to end. At 5-on-5, they got outplayed. On the special teams, they got outplayed. Their goalie didn't play well. Lorraine Brossoit didn't play well. I mean, Winnipeg just boat raced them. And that I did not have on the bingo card coming into this series. So we'll see if Vegas is able to bounce back. But, man, you can't. When your goalie is Lorraine Brossoit and theirs is Connor Hellebuyck, you cannot get outplayed like that. You'll lose every single time. I mean, they're going to lose games where they outplay the Jets in this series. So, not a good debut for Jack Eichel's playoffs. And, man, would be sweet if they got swept. Just throwing it out there. It'd be sweet if they got swept. All right, we'll continue to cover the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we'll start our exit interviews coming up soon. But we got a prospects report coming to you up on our next episode what's going on down in Rochester, Jiri Kulich, Matthew Savoie. We'll break down a little bit further in depth what Adams had to say about those two prospects as well. So all that is ahead here on our next show on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Again, if you want to comment or question, at Locked On Sabres on Twitter, or you could hit us up on YouTube, Locked On Sabres there. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. And again, those everydayers, for you everydayers out there, come back next time. We'll talk some prospects here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.